Let's say we're in 7th grade again. You've been assigned a book report. You need to compare the difference in world building of 2 different pieces of literature, and you chose a very obvious example: SpongeBob SquarePants, the Nickelodeon TV series, and Lord of the Rings. You start rough drafting your notes, which consists of, look at them, it's not hard to tell, and a lot of obviously's, but your 7th grade teacher, Mrs. Wilkins, very nice lady, gives you a grimace when she sees the subject you chose. You ask why, and she gives you the most ridiculous answer you've ever received.
This won't work at all. These 2 subjects share the same magic system.
There are a lot of different meanings when it comes to the term magic, especially in literature. Sometimes magic is a metaphorical term, where something magical simply means whimsical but still ultimately mundane. In some literary worlds, it's a class, an academic study, the greatest force in the universe. And to complicate matters more, there's real magic. Magic has been, and is, practiced in our modern day by various groups of people. Whether or not you believe in its effects, it has shaped a lot of our history. That leaves a lot to consider, but I'm interested in one thing. What's the superior method of designing a magic system, if there is one at all? You've likely heard of the term soft magic and hard magic, as popularized by Brandon Sanderson, the most popular author of fantasy writing in, well, at all. I want to dig into these terms, tear them apart, and differentiate what is really magic and what really isn't magic. If you can truly break your spellcasting down into minute pieces, gestures, or even scribe what plane you're pulling it from, is that even magic? I mean, magic means unknown, but that sounds pretty well understood to me. Is it fair to call it a magic system when the author deliberately states that their pyromancy-adjacent features are not magical in this world, where characters correct others for using terminology like that? And best of all, which will allow your story to leverage the world you've built, the characters you've made, and the systems you've designed in the most compelling way possible? Well, let's describe magic a bit better first. Before anything else, I want to say that this is an open discussion. I've done a good fistful of research to make this video, but I do absolutely make mistakes. If you feel like my point was misguided, or if you have something you'd like to add, tell me what you're thinking. I'll have a pinned comment once this video comes out with corrections I'd like to make. If I find something new, I'll edit that comment for clarification. With the comments down below, or the Discord server linked below if that's your thing, please tell me what you think, or how this impacts your world building. And with that, let's do what we do best and jump back a few thousand years, back to my high school days. Historically, magic is a very ancient practice, and a very serious one at that. When I first started writing the script, I wanted to break practice magic into categories, put it in neat little boxes. And I learned. So did 19th century Europe, apparently. Based on the writings of British historian and Professor Owen Davies and his work Oxford Illustrated History of Witchcraft, this is a dangerous habit. Many have historically tried to separate faith, magic, and science when at one point these could be seen to flow in tandem. So for our purposes, magic as a concept will remain nebulous. For this video, it is to attempt to create an effect indirectly through the use of unknown means. And it all starts in Mesopotamia, or what is now modern-day Iraq. Through inscribed clay tablets and statuettes, we can see an early depiction of a sympathetic universe. Specifically, this defines a world in which everything is connected, similar to the basics of karma, in which your actions will be repented in some fashion at some point in your life. Through these Mesopotamian tablets, we would find instructions in how to cure a dog bite. Paraphrasing here, take clay and apply it to the wound, fashion a dog from clay and place it in the north wall in direct sunlight. Recite this incantation 3 times over, or until the dog surrenders its moisture and the bite dries up. In general, illness was often directly correlated to magic, specifically witchcraft. If there was a pain between your shoulders and blood seeping from your teeth, you would be diagnosed with an infection of the lungs, a product of drinking enchanted water. These forms of malignant spells were tied to indigestion, strokes, facial palsy, a whole slew of afflictions. And to fight these disfigurements, they would create a symbol for this apparent witch, much like they did the dog. Once properly represented, they may offer these symbols to their appointed deity, such as the god of fire, so that they may destroy its root cause. To them, these clay figurines were an analog. With a sympathetic universe, incantations would attach their material goods to intangible curses. That way, they could be controlled. And the Mesopotamians weren't the only ones either. Around this time, Egyptians were fabricating their own writing system, a system of communication that was long mistaken for pictographs. In reality, these carved images were similar to a phonetic alphabet, something discovered after uncovering the Rosetta Stone. And with these writings came perhaps one of the earliest depictions of magic in its rawest form, Heka. Heka was both a concept and a god, representing the primordial force that existed before duality. More importantly to our story, though, is that it began to tie the concept of magic to spoken language. The idea that our words could be used to bend and manipulate this force to match our whims. We got introduced to these extraterrestrial concepts such as the afterlife, spells designed specifically to guide one's spirit to Osiris, the god who will judge a soul and send it to its proper resting place. Archaeologists have uncovered images and physical snake-headed staffs popping up rather commonly. These were interpreted by researchers as some form of wand used to evoke or enchant. But we can get a bit more modern. There goes Alexander the Great conquering Egypt. I need a segue into the Greeks. What do you mean I ruined it by explaining it explicitly? No, I don't think it was that bad. I'd say it's still a smooth transit. Anyways. There are pieces of papyrus inked in Greek language, now stored in museums in Leiden and Stockholm, found in Egypt detailing processes of alchemy. Within it, you may find directions like these. Lime, 1 gram, sulfur, previously ground in equal quantity. Put them together into a vessel. Add sharp vinegar, heat from underneath until the liquid looks like blood. Filter it from the sediments and use it pure. Now, this concoction didn't have an explicit use detailed with its documents, but historians managed to find a very reasonable answer. If you were to dip a bar of pure silver in this poor-smelling liquid, it would begin to discolor, transforming over time. This can change it to gain a copper or brown appearance, turn purple, or, more importantly, resemble that of gold. Now, I can only imagine that if I were to be sitting with a tabletop RPG group playing Tunnels and Trolls, or TNT, it's a real game, look it up, and I told you, your character finds a magical potion that could turn silver pieces into gold pieces for a short period, that would absolutely fly as a magical potion. Yet, here we are, thousands of years ago, actually depicting how to make this for real. What is it that makes it get from point A to point B? I don't know. Magic, I guess. Security through obscurity. The idea that in order to protect something, you lock it behind layers of convolution. When picking a lock, the difference between knowing its internal structure and not knowing is the difference between hours and minutes, seconds even, if you really know what you're doing. However, security through obscurity has been denoted as a very rudimentary, subpar method of protection. That is, unless you're building a puzzle game. If you're developing a puzzle-based game, your goal is not to explain to the player every little mechanic with precision. In fact, it's almost the opposite. It's important to disguise the solution behind some level of illusion, given you assumingly want the player to find out eventually. That's the whole point of a puzzle game. It's the player's job to solve the puzzle. However, much like how easy it is to break through security through obscurity, it takes one person's understanding to make any number of others aware. In security, that's great for hackers. In a puzzle game, we call that spoiling. Even though it took effort, clever thinking, and frustration, that was the intended experience. To tell me how to solve it is to hand me a key that I can't put down. In the game Blueprints, you are equipped with an entire mansion for you to explore. You discover room by room what this manor has to offer you, all in the pursuit of the alleged Room 46. And on your first day, you may have questions like, why is the pantry attached to the bathroom? Or why is there a huge bit of empty space in the middle of the house? And then on day 2, you realize everything has changed. And it dawns on us as players. This goal of getting to Room 46 was simple in concept, but as we're introduced to more and more obstructions, we learn just how much is stopping us from achieving that. And it's not contrived either. If you were to play, you would be able to feel the consideration. It's palpable just how careful the developers were. The world feels grounded and real. The world of Blueprints gets more complex at the pacing we decide. One discovery leads to another, and suddenly we are filled with wonder and intrigue as to where these loose ends lead. Is this world magical in nature? I don't know. I haven't finished my playthrough yet. Luckily, it doesn't change the point that I'm trying to make. And that point is going to have to wait. You see, if we check the schedule, we can't continue until you subscribe. Oh no, you're not able to? Such a shame. I really thought you wouldn't underestimate me. For you see, I come with another proposition. Predisposition, a prediction, a predicate. I have a different thing for you instead. If you're interested in supporting our team or even just this video and you're watching on mobile, please consider hyping this video. Not like, hype. I mean like the new feature that YouTube just came up with. On mobile, if you swipe on the comment section, you'll find a hype button, which is only given to channels below 500,000 subscribers. It helps push videos through the algorithm, which is very helpful for channels of our size. As I'm sure you can imagine, these videos have grown to take a very long time to develop. However, that also means we've gotten more and more thorough. Your support is very much appreciated. Whether you like the video, subscribe to the channel, or hit the hype button below, thank you for helping us take that next step forward. Oh, and the schedule says it's magic time. What exactly is magic? I mean this in several ways. What does it mean by definition, and what does it mean to you? We, especially world builders and gamers alike, use magic in a lot of different ways. I'm going to name a handful of terms and phrases, and I want you to do something for me. For each term, I want you to answer, does this feel magic in some way? Ready? Zombies, water breathing, cultivation, the Force, demons, ghost hunting, SpongeBob SquarePants. Did I get you off guard? How many of those did you consider magical? The term arcane is derived from mysticism, the unknown. It means to be cryptic or undiscovered. Perhaps you've heard the popular quote from famous author Arthur C. Clarke, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And in many cases, I think this is true. One of my favorite unofficial terms in engineering is auto-magically. Does it mean that I believe some forsaken monument at the crest of the mountain smiled upon me and that's why the button on my phone activates my touchscreen map? No. However, that explanation might as well be accurate because I couldn't give you a better answer. It's simple. I type in an address, it gives me a location. It's like magic. But if I lived in the Shire, beneath a hill, tucked away in a hobbit hole in your Lord of the Rings book, snacking on second breakfast, I wouldn't call that magic. No, magic is what Gandalf uses, not what a GPS uses. Did you consider waterbending magical? If you're a fan of the show, you might have caught the exact quote from the pilot. It's not magic, it's waterbending. If you haven't seen the show, like I haven't, I'm very inclined to say yes. D&D wizards have create or destroy water. That's like basically waterbending. Hey, what are you doing with those? But this world sees waterbending as a technique that is very well understood. Maybe not by everybody, but humanity has come very far to recognize its fundamental truths. What about when I said SpongeBob? Did you claim that magic? Because I didn't. But how do you explain it? How are there campfires underwater? Why is Pearl so small in comparison to the true size of a whale her type? How the f*** is there a squirrel down here? Even with my response being, not magic, if you ask me how it works, I might just say, shrug, I don't know, magic, I guess. This word has a lot of polarizing definitions. It means kind of whatever is convenient at the time, frankly. But sometimes that doesn't slide. In some world building, saying arcane means a very direct thing. And this matters a lot when it comes to hard magic systems versus soft magic systems. And probably not in the way that you think. Brandon Sanderson's first law of magics is as follows. An author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. If you've never heard of him, he's the writer of the interconnected Cosmere universe and various series such as the Mistborn and the Stormlight Archive. Outside of his writing, he details this topic so well, in fact, that he does entire lectures on just this. He's the magic systems guy. Let's imagine our protagonist is clutching onto the edge of a cliff, holding on for dear life until their favorite companion runs up, slides in, and rams their fists into the dirt. Just like that, a hand made of rock and earth sprouts out the cliff, picking up our main character and bringing them to safety. How satisfying would that conclusion be? Well, obviously, it depends on all the context I skipped over. Did we know their companion was capable of that? Was this something that they've been training for throughout the entire story? I'm sure you could call out several other moments similar to this in popular media. It has a strong impact. It feels good when executed well. But what if this character has never been capable of that? In fact, it's completely against their design. Maybe this character has neglected their studies and isn't much keen on how such terramancy would work. In fact, they were a failed pyromancer above all else. But they managed to bring their senses together just enough to save this character. Given that's decades of experience, they just pulled out of the power of friendship, but I digress. And perhaps it's still mechanically possible. Maybe divine creatures may call out in times of need and offer exceptional power. It can happen in this world. But we didn't know that. We need to understand that it's possible for it to be a valid and satisfying solution to any given conflict. We don't need to know exactly how it works. We don't need the physics. We just need to know that it can happen. Point blank, Chekhov's gun. And it can be quite difficult to fit it all into the story. What is 1 pound of action to 10 pounds of exposition? One of the most eye-opening things I've heard in story writing space is that world builders and developers often think in something of a web, a two-dimensional or greater space, where this connects to that, where this function interacts with that principle, unless this happens in wit. But stories aren't webs. They're a straight line. We have to put one word after the other, one scene, and then the next. But that's why good world building and good storytelling are so difficult and so exciting to learn. How do you describe this greater world and its very mechanics? Well, one solution is that you don't. It's that simple. Does that mean not developing and recording the information? No. Developing a world and its limitations, in my opinion, is never a bad idea. In fact, I think it builds consistency and interest. It feels possible when rules really do click together. The point is that you only need to tell me so much, just enough to make the story cohesive and interesting. If those rules interlock well enough, I may be able to infer the spaces between them. And that's the spectrum. How many rules are portrayed in your story? How crunchy is your world's physics? I don't just mean how many tables are there in your ttrpg book, I mean how much does it matter how many tables there are? Are those diagrams of the cosmos you drew in a fury at 2 a.m. pertinent? Lord of the Rings feels like it could be a very hard magic system, where you can break a spell down into minor components and draw it as a rune on stiff parchment. It feels like you can break mithril down into its chemical components and compare it to the likes of other metals like iron and bronze. But you can't. Not canonically, at least. It's not there because it's a soft magic story. You don't need to know exactly what Gandalf's spells look like, or what it takes for him to cast them. You just need to know that he's a very powerful and wise character with lots of capabilities. You can boil him down to a scale of power, and it's an equally compelling character. In fact, he could not be magical at all, and still be compelling, capable, and a wise character. To contrast, the likes of Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Full Metal Alchemist showcase some very specific rule sets, so much so that it's actively denoted as not magic. It's bending, or it's alchemy. Magic would be used to describe something they don't understand. And because we understand systems like waterbending and airbending so well, they can develop some nitty-gritty conflicts. Characters can struggle to learn and grow their skills. We can roughly math out just how strong a character is by what exactly they know. And which of these is better, soft magic or hard magic? Which is going to write the better story? Yes, the answer is exactly what you think it is. They're tools, not levels of success. If I, as a writer, want to make you think, get you to puzzle out the dozen different ways this fight could go down in your mind, a hard magic system is going to work perfectly. If I can write their stats down on the page, I can make a scrimmage fights while the movie is paused. Find a way where the hero wins, one where the villain wins, and one where nobody walks away. But if I'm focused on the feeling, on the heart and soul, the journey of physical and emotional growth of two love-struck youngsters caught amidst opposing factions, no, I don't need to know the variance in anatomic mass of supernatural metals. I'm sorry, magical uranium enthusiasts, this isn't your story. Trust me, I'm as sad as you are. And perhaps, if all else fails, we move the spectrum as the story goes on. One of my favorite types of stories is one that has a very crunchy set of rules, but one that the author gives so little information on. We watch huge events take place, far outside our current scope. These displays show us that giant feats are possible, but not how they are accomplished. Instead, we learn and discover with the characters at the rate that they do. The mechanics were always known, always followed, but our soft magic system begins to harden as our conflicts get more and more complex. As we absolve our security through obscurity type obstacles. So, what does this all mean? What exactly is magic, and how can I use it to make my writing better? When I made my most recent video talking about what magic would be like in the real world, I learned a lot of really cool things just by hearing what you had to say. It taught me just the sheer number of ways that this topic can be interpreted and how important communication to your audience is. That's the important part. Communication of your idea. We know that some odd thousands of years ago, magic was not just some kind of literary device. It was a genuine way of life. It was nested into everyday tasks and beliefs. It wasn't an if, it was a when. Owen Davies reminds us that it can be a bit dangerous to categorize and oversimplify these concepts. Whether you call it science or magic or faith is subjective at the end of the day. What you decide to call it is up to you. In fact, the way your world interprets and notarizes the supernatural may have a huge impact on how grounded it feels. Much how waterbending is notably not magic, it makes these magic-adjacent concepts feel so normalized, so inherent to everyday life. So the way that we communicate to our audience matters a lot. What does your world consider magic? And even more so, does it use a soft system or a hard system? Whether it be arcane, mystical, or otherwise, the number of rules that you develop don't have to impact the story directly. Even if you decide to build up pages upon pages of methods, principles, and tenets, you have complete control over how much you want to open that expository faucet. It's important not to just overwhelm your audience with pure fictional fact when it's not necessary to the upcoming conflicts. However, if you do decide to leave your reader in the dark, make sure that it's pointing to something important. In the very first scene of a show, you may choose to show a huge fight between large forces. This will do a good job of giving the viewer a power ceiling. Now, when we see our lowly, unimpressive protagonists just getting their footing, we see this huge gap that, assumingly, they're gonna have to trudge through. If your intention is to follow the character's inner thoughts, the journey they have to take, and the way it changes them, you don't need to tell us every little detail. When printing a detail down, when designing a new table to offer the audience, beg the question, do they need to know this? These details can make a world feel full and interesting and developed, but they can also make a story heavy and convoluted. It may not come off this way, but I'm very much a crunchy rules, hard system type of writer. I love big expansive worlds with specifically scribed runes and diverse ecology. Join the Discord and say, what are the impacts of mirrormancy? You will get pummeled with quantum physics from another realm of existence. And honestly, it can be kind of hard to set that aside. I really want you to know what's in my head. I want you to know that I designed mana in a world down to the fundamental particles. But you don't need to know that yet. Instead, when you walk into the first room, I'll keep the premise simple. Something adjacent to get to room 46. And on your first day, it may feel as if it's just that simple. But by the second day, and the third day, you'll realize that there's so much more to the story, and when another conflict arises, I'll show you the next mechanic at play. After all, an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. If I'm being so honest, it took me a long time to realize the difference between world building and storytelling. To me, for the longest time, they were one and the same. If I make more fruits, design more creatures, come up with more kingdoms and politics, it's like the world speaks its own stories. But it's not really that simple. It took some serious effort and practice to learn what it means to build investment, to create not just the lush pastures and devastating maelstroms, but the entry point for you to join in. I'm confident that if you could just soak in all of that info all at once, you'd love it. I bet you'd find it interesting. I bet you'd be invested. I know you'd have something to share with your findings. But there's no way to just inject worlds like that. One of my favorite parts has become the barrier to entry. Designing not only the expanse, but the complex and well-crafted portal that leads us there. Hey, I want to take a moment to thank the wonderful people on screen. These are my patrons, and they are what makes this whole thing possible. I invite you again to join the Discord or comment your thoughts down below. Your interactions and feedback help me make a better video the next time around. Thank you if you subscribed, if you liked the video, or if you hit that spangly new hype button. It's been really cool having a video that reaches a wider audience, meeting new people with cool, expansive worlds to consume. I hope your writing goes wonderfully and your worlds remain immersive. And of course, thanks.